Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by once again, coming at you with one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews. Today I'll be reviewing the movie and the Blu-ray of Continental Divide, and this is a movie that I never saw. I just blind-buyed this Blu-ray that came out sometime last year on Blu-ray by Kino Lorber. I think I can remember seeing this poster art in video stores, whether it was on a VHS cover or poster for the release or something like that. The cover art's familiar to me. One thing I love about this movie is that, it's back in the early 80s, so they're doing posters with paintings. I just think the painting posters are just so much cooler than posters now. It was really a lost art, something that they did back in the 50, I mean, all the way back to the beginning of movies, really. And it really kind of something that really, I don't know, went by the wayside or whatever. Probably sometime in the 80s or the early 90s was the paintings for the movie posters and stuff. But off the bat, I really liked the poster and the cover that Kino Lorber used to do this release. I'll talk about the movie first, then I'll review the kind of still recently released Kino Lorber Blu-ray. And the only reason I got it is because it was, I don't know if it was on sale or something, but I was able to get it for like $16 or something like that. It's funny because last year I think I saw for the very first time, because Mill Creek put out a Blu-ray of Neighbors. I think that, from what I understand, that's the very last John Belushi movie, with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, and John Belushi playing actually the straight man in that movie. And I think pretty sure I reviewed the movie and the Blu-ray of that release last year. And it was kind of fun to see for the very first time, because I'd never seen Neighbors before. And it was really cool to see for the very first time, one of John Belushi's last movies last year. And it's kind of funny how that was like last spring. And it's kind of fun how this spring I discovered another, this might be the second to last John Belushi movie that he ever made. I'm pretty sure this was released in 1981. And it's like a comedy, like a romantic comedy. And having looked at screenshots and looked at a trailer on YouTube about this, I mean, like, it's kind of up my alley because it's kind of an outdoors nature kind of movie. And so I thought, I kind of like John Belushi, I guess, from when he's doing more, not so much, I'm not so much a fan of Animal House or his role in Animal House. It's kind of interesting to me to see him particularly in a role like I saw last year in The Neighbors, him just doing a more normal role. This is the same kind of thing where he's just playing. It's funny how John Belushi, kind of a more tubby, goofy guy, is playing this. It's like a romantic lead in this movie or whatever. But the basic premise of this movie is John Belushi, I think, plays this guy in Chicago who's some kind of reporter who always gets the dirt on politicians doing the wrong. He catches politicians when at their worst, and publicly shames politicians, or catches all these dirty politicians doing their worst in the act or whatever, and always makes sensational news stories on the newspaper about them or whatever. And he's a well-known journalist, quote unquote journalist, I think in Chicago, if memory serves. And basically, I think there's some, at the beginning of the movie, he does something where he catches some politician that's not too keen, not too happy about it. I'm sure none of them are. But this particular one, I think, actually like blows up his apartment, or actually, because of this dirty politician's power and, the people he knows and stuff, that he's actually trying to basically, he's not very happy about this John Belushi character, he printed what he was doing, or the bad stuff, or making that aware to the public or whatever. So his John Belushi's boss wants to kind of get him out of the city for a while, and he's like, well, here, go cover this nature, this hippie kind of nature obsessed woman out in the wilderness, out in where the hell is it? I don't know, it's somewhere. I think Continental Divide is a term that references this particular area the movie takes place in, but at any rate, it's a really beautiful nature kind of a setting, and this particular woman, I guess, is employed in this kind of cabin to basically chase off, any kind of poachers or people that are hunters that are trying to kill these bald eagles. She's kind of like an eagle protector. I can only assume she's employed by the government to chase off hunters. Not that the government would ever employ anyone to do anything decent like this in reality or whatever, but that's the premise of this movie. It's kind of like, there's so many movies, kind of romantic comedies that are like this, where you've got one particular character who's the exact opposite of one of the other characters. This guy is kind of a fat slob from the city, and this woman is just kind of like this, you know, hot ass, attractive, you know, getting on in years woman who's, you know, living rough in the mountains, who's basically her livelihood or her, you know, existence in life as of late has been to just basically, you know, protect the bald eagles and stuff like that from hunters or whatever. So it's just one of these, you know, it should be said that this movie is like an Amblin Entertainment production, which, if you don't know, is executive produced by, you know, among others, probably, you know, Steven Spielberg. Yeah, Steven Spielberg and Bernie Brillstein. I wonder, yeah, anyway, I'll just save those thoughts to myself. But anyway, so it's basically a Steven Spielberg / Amblin Entertainment production. So, you know, if you know anything about his, you know, movies that he directs and or produces, you kind of get a good idea right there that of what this movie is. It's just kind of a by-the-numbers romantic comedy, if you will. But, you know, I blind buyed this movie because it's like, well, the Kino Lorber Blu-ray just recently came out, and it's early 80s, and it's one of John Belushi's last movies. And just like last year with the movie I saw, Neighbors, he's kind of playing a straight man. Not only that, but like a leading man, and in this romantic comedy kind of movie, early 80s. It's a win-win. Outdoors, it's a win-win. So having blind bought this, I was, you know, it pretty much did everything I was hoping it would do. It's got some really nice, you know, mountain outdoor scenery, and actually really cool footage of like bald eagles possibly, you know, in their mating rituals and flying in the air and flirting and doing all this pre-mating stuff, possibly, whether it's pre-mating stuff in the movie or not. The eagles, you know, there's footage of eagles flying around in the air, and two of them together flying around and, you know, playing tag or whatever the hell they're doing, probably pre-mating rituals or whatever. But, you know, from the romantic comedy standpoint of the movie, it's pretty much paint by numbers and, you know, by the numbers kind of a situation. I think this movie being rated, what is this rated? Yeah, being rated PG, obviously, is in a good way. It's not going to have any of that nasty kind of humor that movies like Animal House might have and stuff like that. I'm getting a little too old for that kind of shit. I've never really liked that kind of nasty humor to begin with, but being PG, it's kind of a nice movie to be all wholesome and stuff like that. So I guess without doing a beat by beat of this movie, that's pretty much the gist of it. Obviously, if we're talking romantic comedy, we're talking about two polar opposites. Obviously, you know, if you know anything about Steven Spielberg produced movies or directed movies, you'll know that obviously as the movie wears on and stuff, they fall in love and this and that, and just like so many movies, and I knew this was coming before it even came. I'm like, oh shit, of course this is like a comedy, romantic comedy, and you know what those have to do? They have to do the last quarter of the movie depressing slump thing. This movie does it, but it doesn't do it as bad. You know, watching a lot of movies last year, revisiting a lot of movies from the 80s from my childhood, like the two Short Circuit movies and Batteries Not Included and all these kind of quote-unquote kids movies, I realized last year that they really terrorized the kids with their movies, because what they do to Johnny Five, like towards the end of Short Circuit 2, and even Short Circuit to the certain extent, it's just like, oh my god. Well, Short Circuit 2, man, they're just bashing them all to hell and all this and that. It's just like, God, what they do to torment kids and killing E.T. only to bring them back seconds later. It's just like, oh my god. So the depressing aspect, the last third depressing aspect of this movie before it, you know, gets happy again, isn't that bad. So obviously throughout the course of the movie, they fall in love in the mountains and this and that, and oh, what's so beautiful and wonderful and stuff and funny and all this and that. It's not a big huge thing. And then at some point, I don't know on what terms, you know, he's there just to basically do a story on her. I don't know if I even said that, but his boss sent him out of the city to get him out of the, you know, out of the politician's hair and this and that, since he's getting his apartment blown up and death threats and stuff. He thought maybe he'd save his life and get him out of the city to do a story on this hippie woman who's trying to protect the bald eagles or whatever. So initially when he gets there, she's like, well, no story, I'm not going to have any news reporter do a story on me. And she, through the course of the movie, she kind of lightens up, and he ends up, you know, he was kind of, you know, before she finds out, he's actually kind of trying to sneak a story, and she finds out he's doing one, and she's like, okay, do one. And obviously they get close throughout the course of the movie, and I can't remember, he's only supposed to be there for like 2 weeks or whatever. I can't remember why, having only seen this once, why he leaves, but I guess he's due to go back, and I think it's possible they part under not too positive circumstances or whatever. And of course the last third slump of this movie is he goes back to Chicago and kind of buries himself in his work and gets back into the politician busting, or if you will, or whatever, only to obviously, the woman comes to the city to do like a thing where she gives a talk or presentation on bald eagles or endangered species or whatever the hell she does. Then obviously they meet up again, and it's just this age-old tale of, oh, you can't survive in the mountains and I can't live in the city. What are we going to do or whatever? And obviously at the end of the movie they come to a compromise. It's some kind of BS thing where they get married or something, and then like she's got a few more months left in the mountains and he's going to go back to Chicago. I don't know. It's kind of like a quote-unquote happy ending, even though they kind of split up and go separate ways at the end of the movie from what I remember. But from what I understand, having only seen it once, it's like she's got a couple more weeks or months on the mountains left, and he's going back to Chicago. And I guess from what I understand, like she's going to come, live with him in Chicago when she's done with her thing in the mountains or whatever. It just seems not particularly realistic, but Steven Spielberg executive produced movie, PG, what do you expect? That's the gist of the movie, and I kind of probably spoiled a little bit of the end of it, but whatever, life goes on. But I was pleasantly surprised. This woman I've never heard of before or seen, I don't think, in a movie before. If I had, I wasn't aware of it. Blair Brown. She's cute for her age and is an interesting companion piece to John Belushi character. I didn't think I really was a big John Belushi fan per se, just because I think one of his most famous roles is probably known from Animal House. I don't particularly like that movie or his role in the movie, but I'm a big fan of the movie Blues Brothers. It's just really cool to see, like I say, last year, see him in a different role that I never saw him in. And this is like, even though I think he did this one before Neighbors, it's the same kind of thing where it's really cool to see John Belushi just in a more straightforward kind of a role, instead of this just punching your cheeks and spitting out whatever's in your mouth kind of a character. It's interesting seeing frickin', well, gosh, this movie's 40 years old this year, so 40 years later it's interesting seeing one of these John Belushi's possibly second to last movie for the very first time. And this is what I mean. I've said so many times in videos and stuff like that I'm not too keen on necessarily movies that are coming out now, but I'm just so grateful and glad that we can Blu-ray outfits like Kino Lorber continue to put out these old movies in these really, really great editions. Did I give stars for this movie? Probably not. I think I'd go probably 2.5. We can probably go as high as 2 3/4 stars out of 4 stars for Continental Divide, because I just like the scenario. I like John Belushi. I like Blair Brown. I like the beautiful nature scenery, of course. So it's a movie that I'd recommend if you can see it for free or cheaply or whatever. Now on to my brief review of the recently released Blu-ray by Kino Lorber. It came out last year. This special features are just simply audio commentary by film historian / filmmaker Daniel Kramer and film historian / biographer Nat Siegeloff, and theatrical trailer. But I didn't bother with any of the commentaries, of course, and I think the theatrical trailer is standard definition, which is kind of a bummer. But what's important for me for a release like this is the image quality, and the image quality, in my estimation, was wonderful. I mean, it's freaking it's a 40-year-old movie from 1981. It's just 35mm film, the way they did them back then, and the way I think movies should always be for all times. But unfortunately the era of shooting movies on film is kind of a bygone thing. But it doesn't matter, because even if they were shooting movies on film now, they'd still suck anyway. You might as well save the film, because you'd just be wasting it on crap anyway. The movie looks absolutely amazing. It's DTS, but I don't think it says on here if it's stereo or not. I mean, it just says frickin' DTS. So at the most it's DTS 2-channel stereo, but it might be a mono movie. It's possible, being 1981. It might be a mono movie. The Blu-ray looks absolutely fantastic. From what I can see, there's a nice, decent, healthy amount of film grain, and it's just really, I just can't thank companies like Kino Lorber enough for continuing to put out old movies like this that so many of us are completely much more interested in having than the newer stuff coming out now, shot digitally and just crap and CG bullshit and stuff. I'm just so grateful to Kino Lorber and all these Blu-ray companies that continue to put out these obscure titles and stuff like that. Like I say, it's a cover art or movie poster that I knew about for a long time, but a movie that I've never seen, and it was absolutely fantastic blind buy. I'd highly recommend the Kino Lorber movie, and mostly kind of more or less recommend the movie. I guess that'll pretty much do it for my movie/Blu-ray review of this particular movie. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video.